Well, good morning, and thank you everybody for waking up with me this morning. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about leveraging technology for today's modern pitcher. First, I want to just talk a little bit about how lucky I've been in my coaching career to be able to have access to some of these tools that I'm going to talk about, and then also have the ability to use them and the ability to use them with our pitchers and be able to have our coaching staff be supportive of all of these different types of technology that we're trying to implement at the various programs I've been fortunate enough to coach at. Coaching with tech or without tech, it doesn't make you a better pitching coach because you have a really nice camera, or it doesn't make you a bad pitching coach if you don't have a TrackMan. These things aren't mutually exclusive, and they don't have to be. The most important thing that we can do as coaches is try to figure out the best way to help our players and specifically what I'm talking about is help our pitchers. And if technology is going to help us, then why wouldn't we try to use it if we have access? And everybody's going to have access to various types. There's not just one thing that you need to use or one thing that you can use that's going to make things right for your players and your pitchers. I've had, probably 5, 6, 7 years of experience using advanced analytics and higher levels of technology. And again, I've been fortunate enough to be able to have those. And it started out, fall of my first year at Wake Forest, we got a TrackMan unit put into our stadium, and I'm working with a pitcher in a bullpen before we have any idea really what TrackMan is or how to use it. And I'm watching this young pitcher. He's a two-way guy. He throws low to mid 90s. He's a freshman. It's kind of all over the place and wild, but you can see something is there, and you can see that this guy is going to be a leverage bullpen guy for us. In my eyes, this guy's going to pitch it out of the bullpen. He's going to come in and be able to strike guys out. He's got kind of a bigger breaking ball that he can pair with his fastball. We can elevate it, and I'm thinking, great, I've got a leverage bullpen arm for his freshman year. And things are going to be great for this kid. He's going to go on and be our closer. And about 3, 4 months, 5 months, fast forward, we're about to start our season, and things aren't going so well for this kid. I'm still trying to get up in the zone. We need you to come in and strike somebody out, and it's not really all that successful. The ball's not moving the way it's supposed to move. I'm getting frustrated. He's getting frustrated. And the things that we start doing is, all right, now we're going to getting a little bit more familiar with what exactly some of the metrics on this fastball are doing. I'm trying to have a guy elevate a fastball with almost no carry and big-time horizontal movement and low spin, and that doesn't make a ton of sense. So I've basically taken this talented kid and trying to pitch him in a role, use him in a role that was not nearly what he was capable of doing, where he would be the most successful. And these numbers helped me get this player into a better role for himself. And he had his struggles as a freshman, but the end of this story is he's a Saturday starter that works off sink and slide, and he doesn't have this fastball that he elevates anymore, and he doesn't have a bigger curveball, and he's able to now leverage his action on his fastball and the movement on his fastball to create more ground balls. He never was a guy that had averaged even more than a strikeout an inning, and here I'm thinking this guy's going to be a guy that strikes out a guy an inning and is a closer. So it's a good lesson, and it was a great lesson for me that there's more out there. There's more information out there. And if we can measure it, why would we try to guess? If it's measurable, let's measure it. So coaching in 2020 and dealing with pitchers in 2020, what is different than when I started coaching in 2003? Players are a little bit more active, a lot more active about their own development now. They want to have a voice in their development, and that's a really healthy and positive thing. They want to be involved. They want to be active. They have more access now than ever to social media, to different types and styles of coaching, to different views, the way they can view their stuff. And in the last 3 years, I don't know that I have a pitcher that doesn't know who the pitching ninja is and doesn't follow him on Twitter and isn't on that guy's timeline and isn't in that guy's feed on a daily basis and wants to talk about it at practice. And it's great. It's a wonderful thing for baseball because it teaches guys that there's different things out there, from different ways to grip a slider to different ways to pair your pitches in attack. And those things are really healthy and positive, but there is just so much more access. The private coaching sector has gotten to a point where it is so good. And not that it wasn't in the past, but there's so many just talented younger coaches that are working in private facilities that are getting their hands on our players at younger and younger ages and helping them. and helping them advance and making them better. And a lot of the private facility coaches have just taken this thing to a whole new level. And then obviously technology, there's just more of it out there now than there was in the past. And it's taken a huge turn, a huge uptick in the way that we're able to coach these players and they're able to be coached. And they've just got more access. There's more options for them in terms of coaching, ways to train. There's been more studies done through sports science to be able to show that there's different ways to train players, there's different ways to look at players, and that's another positive and healthy thing and a great thing that we deal with daily. In 2003, when I started coaching at Santa Barbara City College, there was still plenty of good training options, still plenty of people that were trying to push the envelope forward. I mean, if you look back to 1980, Jerry Weinstein was doing all of these things. He just wasn't doing it with the expensive equipment that we have today. But he was doing all of these things. This guy's the godfather of pitching development. There was no social media, there was no Twitter back then, there was nowhere to go for it, and just less public information. I mean, you could get on the internet and try and find things, but it was less prevalent as it is today. There's just less out there. When we're starting to talk about technology and how we're going to leverage these things and how we're going to use them, I'm really lucky I come from a family of educators. I have a mother that was a principal for 30 years, a brother that's a principal at a STEM school, and two other uncles or a bunch of other uncles and aunts that are also teachers and educators. And the most important thing you can start, where you start the base of your pyramid really, is trying to figure out what kind of learners you have on your staff. There's 4 basic types of learners: visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. For the purposes of what we're going to talk about today, we're really only talking about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. Those are about 90% of your guys. Those will end up being about 90% of your guys. So we're talking about learning styles and then leveraging what we have from a technology standpoint. This would be something that we would use for if we had a visual learner, we had somebody that had that as a component of his learning style. We're talking about, this is just a really simple post-game report from the fall. And we're looking at pitch metrics, we're looking at location, we're looking at how the pitches move. Our pitchers are needing to understand what they're good at. A lot of pitchers don't understand what they're good at. So this is a pitcher with middling carry on his fastball, some horizontal lift. He should be pitching exactly where he's pitching and high spin. If this pitcher had lift on his fastball and carry, then those fastball density plots, those points that we track with TrackMan, would be up in the strike zone to hopefully get him to be a little bit more effective with what he's doing. But this is a way to bridge the gap between here's where the balls are going, here's what your stuff does, and help teach them and help them learn about what they're doing with the baseball. In season, this thing gets a little bit more complex, where you're dealing with pitch by count, percentages of how many times you're throwing, slider, breaking ball, changeup, in whatever count, the percentages that we're using each pitch totally, and then how the pitch performs against the bat. So you're getting slider, metrics, and then launch angle, exit velocity, in and out of zone swing percentages on their post-game report, so it just gives them a little bit more feedback. Auditory learners. This will take a little while. We're going to go through some slides and some video to talk a little bit about this. Cueing and assessment. Cueing without assessment, to me, is crazy. Assessing is what we need to do, the first thing we do when we start to work with players. Overall assessments. Now, this can be whatever you are comfortable with or whatever you have access to. Ours is a training room, strength conditioning coach, and delivery. And we'll get assessments on all of those things before we'll ever really talk to a player about what he's supposed to be doing with the baseball, how he's supposed to be moving the ball around, what kind of things we want him to do from a movement standpoint in his delivery. You have to have assessment before you talk to a player. Different things work for different players. Different ways to talk to players are important to understand, like how you're going to talk to those players. And you can't really do that unless you know what they're capable of doing from a movement profile first. We try to keep our attention on external cueing versus internal cueing. Internal cueing would be like telling somebody to stay closed or keep their front side up or something along those lines. External cueing is more based on goal-oriented approaches, get the fastball to the glove side, press into the ground, things along those lines, giving a player a goal rather than giving a player a movement cue. Attentional focus and motor learning, written by Gabrielle Wolf. She's done wonderful work. She's a professor at UNLV. She also wrote the Optimal Theory of Motor Learning. These are just some studies out there that if you are interested in these types of things, it's really beneficial and interesting. The next 2 slides we're going to look at are before and after force collection. We have a force mound at Arkansas. We're incredibly fortunate to have it. These slides will illustrate some internal cueing versus external cueing. The first slides that you'll look at are a pitcher, a professional that's was back working out with us. And he was working off of some internal cueing in terms of how he was going to extend his stride. He didn't feel like he was really using his lower half all that much, and some of the numbers that he presented with us bore that out. And he was trying to extend away from the rubber and rotate into foot strike. So he had a bunch of different internal things that he was trying to think about while he was pitching, and it wasn't as efficient in terms of generating force and then holding that force over time. Later in the slides, we changed to an external focus where we're looking at just a goal of driving into the ground, and we're able to measure that. So these things that you're looking at right now, the green line that you see on top is Z force moving into the ground. The red line that you see start to peak positively and negatively is Y force. That moves force back and forth, so back towards second base and then into foot strike, going forward to the catcher. So it moves force from back leg to front leg, so trail leg to lead leg. And the white line that you see right there is just force that's moving left to right over the rubber, and then force that's moving left to right at the base. And that is just heel to toe. If you think about where force is being created or where force is being put, it's just heel to toe approach on force. And what this is going to show is a lower force creation at the top of the delivery. This is a 225-pound athlete, and he's putting about roughly 250 pounds of force into the ground, which is not nearly as much as he should be creating. As you can see at the top of the delivery there, when he's landing, it's almost 400 pounds of force directly into the ground. So he's capable of creating more. And again, where he's working off of these internal cues. This is the graph that you just saw that was to the right. This is an easier way to see it. You can see on the Y force, which is force going back towards second base, there's a sharp peak. He's not holding that force over time, creating any potential energy down the mound into foot strike. So this would be after some external cueing of just driving into the ground and trying to press force into the ground, and then we were able to measure from pitch to pitch on this mound and with this force mound. So what you can see is smoother curves, a longer generation hold of force into foot strike. He's created an additional 50 pounds of force at the top of the delivery before he moves forward, and that has led him to like roughly a 6'1" stride length from like a 5'5" stride length. So he's increased his stride length, and over time his pitches will perform back to the way they were before the stride length was shrunk significantly. This is that force graph, and then these are the two graphs next to each other. So you have prior to and post, just cueing. Different ways of cueing this athlete effectively. Kinesthetic learners. So what we're seeing right here is a video, which is an overlay of a delivery that was out of it. So as he was lifting, he was moving out of his heel, sliding across his body, creating massive amounts of cut on his fastball, and then having to fly open to fix the delivery from a landing perspective. We put him in a Velo Pro harness, which is something that we use to try to anchor their back foot down. There are certainly other things you can use. The core velocity belt is another really good one for something like this. This anchors him into the ground and allows him to get some feel for how he's moving. So hopefully you can see the knee is so far out over the toe without the belt on. And then when he lands, he's got better force control and direction while he's wearing the harness. These are just some teaches that we use to kind of connect some feel to the actual data that we're seeing. This allowed him to feel what it was like to drive through the baseball again and reduce some of that cut on his fastball. So what's out there? What tech is out there? If you spend 5 minutes walking through the Expo Center, you're going to find what looks like 1,000 different types of technology. You can go from high-speed cameras that will move everywhere from $8,000 to your iPhone camera. Tracking the baseball, Rapsodo, TrackMan, FlightScope, Yakkertech, Diamond Kinetics has a pitch tracker. Baseball, F5 Sports has a ball that tracks some of the same metrics that all of the, TrackMan, Rapsodo, and Yakkertech are tracking, and FlightScope are tracking. And they can spend anywhere from, $25,000 to $500. It just depends on your budget, what you're comfortable with. You have wearables like Modus and the K-Vest. You got the Newt Force Mount, which was the force mount that we were seeing some video on earlier. Kyle Barker and the fellows over there have done a wonderful job and been good to partner with them with that building of that mound and then developing some of the things that have come out of it. Mobile biomechanics assessments. You have places that will go, facilities that will go on the road and assess your players and give you biomechanical feedback. The guys at Driveline, P3, and then ASMI also is doing these types of things. The thought of that five years ago was insane to me. You have biomechanics labs that are on baseball fields now. There's just so much of it out there. So how do we connect some of this tech to feel for our pitcher? So what we're looking at here is a pitcher who was well above average command pitcher for us as a freshman. He was creating good amounts of cut on his fastball this fall and losing command of the glove side of the plate. It was an efficiency. He was about a 90% efficient fastball, 92% efficient fastball, which is not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it had dipped all the way down into the 77, 78, 80% range. And we're looking to try to figure out what's going on with this guy and how do we help him fix it. So for whatever reason, we didn't have our Edgertronic cameras one day. All we've got is this iPad. And this is a video of him pitching. We've got a heel slide that we started to notice where you can see kind of the circle over his foot. Heel slide out. He's now pitching from an unstable base. And that's causing him to cross his body, start to cut the fastball, and get him in a situation where he can't effectively execute pitches and lose efficiency of his spin. So we take his next bullpen, throw him onto the force mound, and we start to see that we've got slide in his heel, and we've got force dumping into his quad and not staying into his glute. Just an unstable base to try to command pitches from, and that was what we had kind of identified as that's causing him to now cut his fastball, lose efficiency, and also command. He wasn't throwing as many strikes. So we take all of our information that we have, and we're going to try to connect some drills for this player. So we know from a technology standpoint what's happened with him and what's going on with him is he's not being able to load his glute as effectively. We're going to give him a glute-loaded drill, throwing a medicine ball off of a box, so he's got a glute-loaded drill. And then we can transition into a more ballistic move up the mound to try to give him a feel of driving off of his back foot while he's moving in space. And the result of this is, well, it's 3 or 4 weeks of pretty intensive work. We slightly moved his heel away from the rubber so he didn't have to feel as though he was going to need to move as much in his delivery to give him a more stable base to operate from. And now we've got a heel that's more stable. We pick up our efficiency back into the low 90s. So he's back to where he was in terms of how he's spinning the baseball. Again, certainly not backspin by any stretch of the imagination, but much better. And the command to his glove side of the plate is improved back to roughly a 62 to 65% strike pitch. So the next 4 slides we're going to go over are going to show what's going on in the bullpen, how we're using some of these technologies in the bullpen. This is basically Edgertronic, Rapsodo, metrics, and we're using them in different ways. There's also some quick hacks in here that I'll go through if you don't, for whatever reason, you don't have something like that. I mean, there's certainly plenty of people that don't. So this was a bullpen where we're throwing with a freshman 2 weeks before the start of the season. He's got a high carry fastball, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to pair a breaking ball or a changeup off of this fastball, and we're going to spend a lot of time doing that. We're going to overlay some pitches. We're going to get in there with him and teach him how to use his stuff. And what we found out was they might not pair as well as these 2 pitches, which are his changeup and his slider. They blend together, they split, they get to different locations effectively. He's got basically 16 inches moving to his left and 9 inches moving to his right. There's a good density split. The pitches start together, break at the decision point, or right around the decision point, and give him a weapon that he can use. So now he's got more weapons when he goes into a game situation. He's got his high carry fastball he can use. He can use breaking balls off of that, but he can also use off speed off of off speed. And he didn't know that and we didn't know that, truthfully, before we were able to do this and we were able to see this, and he was able to see this. So, and from a post-processing standpoint, he's now taking this information with him, looking at now I can use these different types of weapons. Now I'm going into battle with different weapons. I have my fastball that I know is good, but I also have these types of pitches that I can use together. And that's a powerful thing for a pitcher. This is going to be a quick hack you can use. If you had an iPhone or you had an iPad, an iMovie access, you could make this happen. This was a pitcher, a freshman that was struggling to try to figure out exactly what his ball was doing, what kind of axis he was spinning the baseball on. We're trying to convince this young man that he needs to pitch up in the strike zone because of where the axis is, where the spin is, and where the efficiencies are, and the vertical movement on the pitch. And he's having a hard time conceptually realizing like where my fastball and how my fastball is moving. So this gives him a clock face, helps him understand that it's like a 1230 tilt, so like 190-degree spin axis, and also lift and carry. So he's got the metrics of the pitch on the screen, and he's got a visual on the screen also. Another one is if you don't have anything along these lines and you want to try to figure out a few things about how the ball spins or identifying spin, take a baseball, draw a black circle around the four seam, draw a black circle around the two seam on a different ball, have them just spin balls off of with camera behind. It can be iPhone, it can be iPad. You can figure out some things about spin. So it gives different ways to get kind of this same result. We're just trying to help this guy figure out how he should be using his fastball when he does get in a situation when he needs a pitch. This is the same freshman, same pitcher, where we're working with now we have this weapon, now we have this carry fastball, we have this pitch that's going to be something he can use in a game situation, going to be something he can use in his arsenal, but what goes with it? How do we then use those pitches together? So he's going to throw fastball to the top of the zone and spin his breaking ball off of it, which is a common thing, but this is why this is going to work for him based on showing him the balls travel together, balls leave the same spot, they come back together, and then they split and have a good distance apart at their landing positions, and they also have metrics that suggest they should be thrown together. You've got 20 inches of carry on a fastball, and then you've got 19 inches of depth on a breaking ball, almost 20 inches of depth on a breaking ball, which is a lot. And then you've got 11 inches of horizontal movement on moving the same way on both pitches. And this gives our player a visual of understanding of how he's supposed to use these pitches together, what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to split, and how he's supposed to be able to use his arsenal to effectively use these two pitches together. This last one is an adjustment we made on a breaking ball where we had an axis that was moving more towards a curveball. So you have roughly, if you think on a clock face, you have 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock is like a 6:30 tilt. And he's trying to throw a slider. He thinks he's throwing a slider. So first thing we had to do is adjust his grip to get him to the front of the baseball. When we're talking to the player, we're talking to him about getting the nose of the baseball to turn down. If you think about the ball coming up out of your hand, the nose of the baseball is pointed up. And we're trying to get him over the front of the ball to turn the nose down and to create something that's breaking left. His fastball suggests that he should be able to throw with right movement, and we need something to break left out of his hand, where the curveball was giving us too much vertical movement and not enough horizontal depth to be able to play off of his fastball effectively. So a couple of the other tools we were able to use is to show him, one, where the old grip, the adjusted grip are, explain his metrics. You'll be able to see that the metrics aren't all that different except for spin axis, where he's taken the axis of the spin and shifted it more towards 8:30, 9 o'clock in that range. And it allows him to rip through the baseball and throw through his axis instead of against it. You also have the Driveline Edge program where we've taken some of the Driveline Edge visual video of the spin and dumped it into this video. So he's able to then see a visual representation of what should be happening with his spin and then be able to see him actually spin the baseball. You can use the Edge program for a lot of different things. It's a wonderful program made by the fellows up at Driveline, and you can basically just plug and play metrics and show your pitchers before you ever get into a bullpen session of how you're going to use, how their pitches should be breaking, how you want their pitches to break, and how they can do some things to adjust and fix spin. So you've got old grip, new grip. You can see the new grip is slightly higher from a release height standpoint. And this is the Edge program showing a visual representation of what spin's going to do, dumped on top of the metrics of how the pitches are going to break and how the pitches are going to move. So these are just some things that we would do from a bullpen standpoint, in the bullpen, to be able to help our guys be able to see some things with their arsenal, try to teach them a little bit about their stuff, try to teach them about how the ball should be moving, and give them some things to take into a game with with them to be able to create some of the things we were talking about earlier with the visuals of lower contact percentages, lower exit velocities, and so forth. This is part of what we do from a bullpen standpoint. It's not all that we do. They still aren't going out there. They're still competing. They're still spending time making pitches. They're not sitting there thinking about pitch metrics when they're in there throwing a bullpen. A lot of this is done in the post-processing or the pre-bullpen meeting that we have with these pitchers about what are the individual goals for today? What are the individual goals for you as a pitcher? What are the things that we need you to be able to do? What are the things that you're trying to accomplish in today's pen? And then how are you going to leverage the importance of this part versus the importance of still going out there and having a competitive bullpen environment? And that's a tough balancing act, but it's something that if you have a situation where they're getting this type of feedback on the backside, they're taking this stuff with them, they're able to look at these either videos or pitch metrics or however you're trying to coach your pitchers, then you've got a way to create a competitive bullpen environment where they're still out there executing pitches, still out there doing what they can to adjust their stuff so that when they take these things into a game situation, they have more confidence with what they're about to use. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. What I'm trying to do as a pitching coach is teach my pitchers exactly what they're able to do with a baseball, how they're able to use pitches, and what they're going to be able to use to get outs. Those are the things that we hunt. We don't hunt a perfect-looking slider. We don't hunt spin rates. We don't hunt axes. We hunt outs. And the way that we are going to do that are going to be to use some of these things to leverage. Last example we'll go through is last year, our Friday guy, Isaiah Campbell. This is a bullpen that he threw prior to an outing against Kentucky. He was struggling with his breaking ball and his cutter. He called it a cutter. It was probably a slider, moving together. And the efficiencies and the pitch and the movement profiles of the pitch suggested that was happening. So in this bullpen, now this is not a pretty looking scatter plot of what the pitches were doing, but it was a bullpen, and it doesn't always mean you need to see perfect to see progress. But he was able to dump more topspin into his breaking ball. He was able to drive the pitch more vertically. He was able to create more separation between his fastball and his breaking ball from previous weeks. Previous weeks, it was more in the 20% efficient range, and it wasn't moving the way that it should. It was more of a side-to-side pitch. The two are starting to blend together. So the focus of this bullpen was to do those very things, and hopefully be able to pair that with a fastball that he could use up in the strike zone at times. And then we were able to take video from his outing, flip it into an overlay, and then put those things on top of each other so he could see how his pitches were working together. That was simply a elevated fastball and an 0-2 count and a 1-2 curveball down. So from what he was working on, from the things he was trying to create in terms of separation between pitches, it allowed him to be able to now see that he was able to do those things, also to take the data that he was working through in the bullpen and translate it to how he was going to use it or how he was going to attack in a game situation. So he's able to get some feedback and then take this with him so he has some feel for what's going to go on with my stuff as I kind of move forward and transition into this next outing or next bullpen session or whatever it is. So, in conclusion, the things that I think are really important are trying to measure what you're trying to coach, trying to figure out the best way to measure outing to outing, pen to pen, catch session to catch session, whether it's video, whether it's TrackMan, whether it's a Rapsodo, whatever it is. Measure what you can measure. Control those things for your players, show them progress, show them an ability to use their stuff effectively, show them how they're going to attack with their weapons, help them build weapons. And one of the best ways to do that that I have come across is to be able to leverage what you have from a technology standpoint to give them more tools. They're just tools. That's all they are. They allow us to show things. They allow us to give players feedback. They allow us to give some empirical data. They allow us to not even create more buy-in from players, because I think that good coaching and it doesn't really matter where you're getting it from, but give you something to be able to take with you as you start to try to build your profile of your pitchers. Again, like I said at the beginning, have been lucky to work for some really great people. First guy to ever give me a job, Tom Tereszchuk at Chapman University, Teddy Warwicker, Dan O'Brien, Nino Giarratano, Tom Walter, Tim Jameson, and now Dave Van Horn. All of these men gave me an opportunity to use technology or grow as a coach, and they never stifled it. They never tried to get in the way of it. They never said, that's because it's new, it doesn't mean that means it's not going to work. Don't put too much junk in our players' heads. These things were never said to me as a coach. They empowered me to try to figure out the best way to use it. They empowered me to figure out the best way to train and the best way to make the players have the players have a new understanding of how to use what they do have, and then how to also gain advantage by training for what they don't have yet. So overall, those men have given me a great opportunity. I thank the ABCA for giving me a great opportunity to stand here in front of you guys today, and that's all the time I have, but much appreciated, and enjoy the rest of the convention.
So a question I have for you, all this stuff is awesome. I'm a coach at a high school level. We don't have the dollars for that technology. But one thing you said that struck me was drawing lines on the ball and how that at least give you some ideas of what's going on. Yep. Can you talk a little more about that? Because I think I'd like to try to employ that.
So you take a four-seam fastball, find where your player is gripping a four-seam fastball, just take a Sharpie and just draw a black line around the ball, so you can see how the ball is spinning on the way to the plate. I would advise, if you're going to use that type of thing, to put the camera behind them, or put a camera behind them, so you can see ball flight in addition to the first 30 to 40 feet of spin. And you can do that off of a two-seam axis also. I find it most effective for fastballs. People use it for breaking balls, and it does work, but it's most, for me personally, in my experience, been most effective for four-seam and two-seam fastballs.
At the high school level, Rapsodo, a lot of my pitchers throw 78 to 82. Are there metrics you might be looking at, or what are you doing with Rapsodo with guys that might not be the upper 80 or 90 guy?
So you're looking at the whole picture of the pitcher. You're looking at baseline numbers for most of them. When you start, that's really the first thing you do, is just establish a baseline for what your pitchers are capable of doing, and then, if from us personally, you're looking for something that's an outlier. You're looking to try to find an outlier when you're using a Rapsodo or using a TrackMan or anything, is to try to identify what is an outlier and then start to build his arsenal around what he does well. So if you have a pitcher that is 78 to 82 miles an hour but has excessive spin on a breaking ball, then you might be building a profile off of what does his breaking ball do. Like, show me your breaking ball and I'll tell you how you're going to get people out, is usually the way we operate. And if you have something that's special, or you have metrics that are special, like a ton of carry or a ton of horizontal movement, then build your pitcher around what he's already doing really well.
Hi, Coach. You talked about the force plates and the amount of force in pounds that a guy puts into it. Is there a certain percentage that you expect a guy to get to that tells you, like, this guy should be at this amount or he should be at this amount? Do you have anything like that?
The things that we're more looking at are force over time. So how long he's able to hold whatever force he's able to create. And when you're looking at a 220-pound, 230-pound athlete, and they're only putting an additional 15 to 20 pounds into the top of their delivery, they're not really creating any potential energy to drive into foot strike. And one of the things that we harp on with our guys when we're using that piece of tech is that we want to try to hold force back towards second base and down into the ground before they start to advance towards home plate. You want those graphs that you saw, you want those graphs to be as close as possible at their Z peaks. So when you saw his graphs, by no stretch of the imagination is that a finished product. That video was taken from 12:15 one day to 12:45 the same day, and just beating our heads against the wall, trial and error, trying to measure exactly what he should have been able to do. So he's still not creating nearly enough force at the top of his delivery to maximize what he's going to do in a foot strike if he's able to put 400 pounds into the ground and then able to return that force back up into his body at the rate that he does. So is there a magic number? There need to be a lot more studies done on force mounds before you're looking for norms and magic numbers. What we try to create with what we have is norms for our players.
Right here. Morning, Coach. Question. On the assessment, when you get a kid in, say, how much assessment of his strength and conditioning goes into, hey, we can get 3 miles out more on this kid's fastball, 5 miles, et cetera, and how much does that play? How much time does a kid spend in this strength and conditioning program as you're trying to get him where you want him as a pitcher?
Well, they never leave a strength and conditioning program, I guess, is the long-range answer. But the strength and conditioning assessment's really important from what our strength conditioning coach does in the weight room, where we give him full autonomy because he's a rock star strength coach. But that assessment of how they move physically, how they move weight is really important for me, and how they move physically from a training standpoint. Do they have loose or tight hips? Is the dorsiflexion where it needs to be at the lower leg? What is their shoulder internal external rotation? There's a bunch of different, there's a bunch of different assessments out there. There's FMS screening. There's a ton of different assessments that you can get into. We have a custom job at Arkansas, and we really like it. And it's three-pronged. It's strength conditioning, obviously delivery, and then what they're doing in the training room with our trainer. So I think that what you find is guys aren't capable of doing what you want them to do yet. Whether it's mobility, whether it's strength, there are some things that are causing your player to not be able to do what you're doing. That's why you have to be really careful with how you talk to them and what you're trying to get them to do. If you're trying to have a pitcher make a move that he's either not strong enough to do or not mobile enough to execute, that's going to be incredibly frustrating for that pitcher and for you as a coach. So try to get as much information as you can on the front end before you really dump them into any kind of skill development or acquisition, just because it's better for the player.
Morning, Coach. I had two questions. So we have the ability to use Edgertronic. We have Rapsodo. We have TrackMan. And we had a guy that was in charge of that, and he left. And now we're kind of at a loss, being kind of novices in the areas of all the data and how we use it. So how would you recommend go about that, using that equipment? And possibly from experience, did you reach out to the individuals from those companies? Were you self-taught? Was there something that you started as a foundation, maybe within a book or a text or something that you used to then apply that information so you could then relay it to your players and help them better perform?
I think that the first part of your question, as far as what to do when somebody leaves that's handling these things for you, that happens to us really all the time. We lose guys. The person that helped, and I forgot to mention him on stage, I'm terrible, but Doug Willie, who we just lost to the Cubs, was our guy that did that. Now, while he was doing his job, he was responsible for training one person below him. And depending on your organization, it can be another player. It can be somebody that you find on your campus, on your high school campus, and your college campus. There's plenty of people that know much more about how to create an overlay or put graphics on a video than I do, certainly. And I think that creating a system for these people so that when you have somebody that's really good that helps you out with these things, I certainly don't sit around and make overlays for every one of our pitchers. Like, I have 2 or 3 guys that are helping us out with that. But if you have one other guy that is adept at doing those things, then he needs to be training either you or somebody else while that's going on, so that when you don't have that, they don't lose a feedback loop for the players once somebody moves on. And then as far as learning about, how to use those tools, and I've been really lucky to have a pretty good relationship with the guys up at Driveline and Kyle and those guys, and Eric Jagers, who's presenting on pitch design at 10 o'clock over in the Expo Center. I would recommend that everybody that's interested in that goes and listens to that guy. But using resources like that, Driveline, I'm sure I'll forget about 50 other ones, but they're out there, they're in your area. There's people that are using Edgertronic cameras. There's people that are using Rapsodos. If you have access to those things and you're struggling with how to use it, you have to find somebody local in your area that you can reach out to first, and then you can go to the companies, but you're not going to get as much hands-on as you're going to get from people that are in your area.
Hi, Coach. I was curious, when you start talking to a player about force on his plant foot, do you ever have issues with their head coming up or bobbing in their delivery?
Not something that we've seen. I could see that at a younger level, though. The main things we're talking about with force, the majority of pitchers have been taught a pretty hip-loaded delivery. And what we found just with our guys, again, I'm not saying there's any study done on this, but just with our guys, the guys that we've been able to evaluate and look at, that really sucks a lot of force out of the back leg, and they're not able to put as much into the ground at the top of the delivery to create that energy to stretch over time, to be able to create something that's a little bit more powerful in a foot strike. So what we try to, if you're in a pre-bullpen meeting or you're talking about what you're going to try to accomplish today and what they're about to go do on the force mound or any mound, we're talking about moving force back towards second base and down into the ground. So we're trying to move it back towards second while they're applying pressure to the ground to try to keep their shin vertical and create a better line to the plate and also create more force at the top.
Hey, Coach, can you talk a little bit about how you use the Rapsodo to tell whether your pitchers need to throw up in the zone or down in the zone? And this is from a high school perspective. So is there like 15-inch of vertical break or 20-inch? Like how do you?
General rules are you don't want dead zone fastballs. You don't want balls that are moving 14 to 15 inches vertically and 11 to 12 inches horizontally. You don't want stuff that lands in the dead zone. You want something that is extreme or an outlier if you're talking about pitching at the top of the zone, pitching at the bottom of the zone, or however you're going to use pitches. I think people get way too carried away with it. Personally, they see a high spin fastball and they're like up in the zone immediately, and that doesn't necessarily mean that. You have to check on a bunch of different markers before you're deciding about how to use fastballs. There's got to be an efficiency component to how they spin the ball. They might be picking up a lot of extra spin from gyro spin that does not contribute to lift, that's actually cut, and they might be throwing a pitch that has, 20 inches of carry and 4 inches of vertical or horizontal movement, and that's a pitch with backspin and spin that can be planted at the top of the strike zone and be effective. But I think people get way too carried away with that, and they want to be experts before they're generalists. And what you have to teach pitchers first is how to make pitches. That's really important. And a lot of people jump around too much when they get a Rapsodo or they have access to a TrackMan or whatever it is. They see these numbers and think, okay, that means that kid has to do that. That's the kind of the end of them. Like the beginning of them is figuring out how to make pitches, how to execute. And then you can get a little bit more specific. It's like trying to perform a high level move in the weight room before you can back squat your body weight. Like if you think about it from a strength conditioning standpoint, that's how I like to look at it. It's like, let's be strong first. Let's be able to execute first before we worry about whether or not we're going to pitch up or down in the zone.
Good morning, Coach.
Morning.
I'm coaching at the high school level, and one of the issues that I have is coming up with a common language. I have kids who are working with high-level trainers on their own, and then they're working with me. And the language of biomechanics is sometimes tough for both of us. So I was wondering if you could give me a little bit more on the external and internal cueing and maybe some of the things that you guys use where I can talk to them about what they're doing with their other coaches, and we have kind of a common language that we can use.
Right. I think that the most important thing is if you are struggling with those issues, because we struggle with that issue too, because our guys have to go home. Our guys are probably home right now throwing bullpens with somebody else. I would hope that they are throwing under supervision, and they might be getting different information. So the first thing, the baseline of all of this is communication between you and that private coach. Talk to them, figure out what they're saying. Don't adapt to everything that they're saying, because everything they're saying might not be the things that fit in your program. But just if you're talking about verbiage and how to talk to guys, you want to find out what are the things that are being said to your player when you're not around. And that's the baseline of what we do. So if we have a guy that's in Southern California throwing a bullpen, wherever he's throwing it, I need to talk to that person and make sure that whatever is being said to this player, I'm going to be able to come back around and say, I know that you were getting these types of instructional cues. Here's how they fit into what we do. And then as far as internal versus external cueing, internal cueing is mainly just you're verbalizing how to move your body in space to a player. And that might be the most challenging thing for any athlete to do. And if you think about what you're trying to get them to do, if you're trying to get a glove side fastball executed, but you're trying to do it by telling them to keep their front side closed and stride 4 inches across their body or whatever the cues that you're using are, it's a really confusing to the brain. The brain's just trying to get the ball over to that side of the plate. And you should work on structural movements and structural movement profiles outside of any type of bullpen setting where you're trying to get execution. If you're not trying to get execution, you're just hunting velocity that day or something in the bullpen, then you can get a little bit more free with it. But we keep all the cueing or most of the cueing that we do, the majority we like to think is based on results of what they're trying to accomplish. Give them a task, give them a goal that they can accomplish, and that allows them to be more successful, and then you start building on those things to more advanced things.
Coach, right here. Good morning. Two-part question for you. What do you use for your personal learning survey? for your guys to figure out? You talked about what kind of learners. So how do you figure that out? What do you use? And also, I'd love to hear your ideas on, you talked about competition bullpen environment. I'd love to hear your ideas on that.
Okay, so when you're starting to try to determine styles of learning, the people in our room that are high school teachers or that are teaching classes at a junior college, or you have access to an unbelievable resource. What we use is general conversation through recruiting. So if I have 2 years to recruit a kid, I have a long runway to build up to how does this kid learn? What type of learner is he? I've also got the resources of everybody that's coached this kid. And if I'm gonna recruit a kid or we're gonna recruit somebody to our program, we're gonna talk to all of these people first. So I'm gonna have the high school coach, the travel ball coach, the personal coach, and have that conversation with them. What have you used with player X? How have you helped, Johnny throw a fastball to the arm side? What are the things that have worked for him? Is it video? Is it going with a post-processing bullpen where he's reading his Rapsodo report or something like that? So what we use is basic conversation and just getting to know our players through a recruiting process or while they're on campus. So it's not anything formal where they sit down and take a survey. The second part, what was the second part of your question again? Competition bullpens. What we do is give them specific goals that we're trying to create. So if they're facing hitters, they have a hitter standing in and they have X number of fastballs to the arm side of the plate, or they're playing horse with another pitcher, or we're trying to distract them while they're throwing, things like that. I mean, we don't have a competition bullpen day at Arkansas or anywhere that I've coached. What we do have is a competitive environment. So we keep a leaderboard with all of our metrics. We keep a leaderboard with all of everything from pitch velocity to whip plus. On our wall, we force them to see their bullpen results. We send them information, we flood them with information, and we make sure that we're not keeping anything from our players. And what it does, it creates a pretty good environment in there. Our environment in our bullpen, in our PDC, our Pitching Development Center, it's constant competition. Yes.
Good morning, Coach. So my question for you is, you kind of talked a little bit about how when you're trying to tweak some of your pitcher's mechanics, that you utilize some of the tools that you have. A couple of the examples you gave were the Velo Pro and the Core Velocity Belt.
Yep.
So when you're using them, obviously you use them a lot in the off season, I'm sure, but when you guys get in season and your pitchers are preparing to compete against other teams, are you still using those tools to keep on assessing them in season, or are you kind of straying away from them a little bit so they can focus on just pitching and competing on the mound?
I might be a little different than most. I don't think there's ever a time that you're not developing. I don't think there's ever a time that you should walk away from any type of development you're working on with it. If I'm working on a drill with Patrick Wicklander and it involves the Core Velocity Belt or involves the Velo Pro or involves any number of other things, and it's helping him, I'm never going to stray away from that until we're at a situation where his body's organized enough to make those movements without it. And I'm never going to stop the development curve for our players at any point. It's a long range goal for these guys. Like I get 2, 1 sometimes, 3 years with most of our talent, and sometimes 4. Thankfully, we get 4 sometimes. We don't have a whole lot of time, so we have to be in constant mode of development. And our goals and what we're trying to do for our players is get them ready for when we're not around, and get them ready for when they don't have their pitching coach, when they go off to professional baseball, wherever the next stage is in their life. But from a playing standpoint, the best thing that I can do for our players isn't going to Omaha. The best thing we can do for our players that have aspirations to continue to play is make sure that when they show up for their first day of pro ball, they can articulate to the pitching coordinator or the pitching coach at the affiliate exactly what they do from day one to the next time they pitch.
Hey, Coach, over here. From a standpoint where tech like Rapsodo, right here.
Yeah, there you go.
Rapsodo and all that stuff just isn't available due to budget reasons. How would you recommend being as efficient with tech as possible using like iPhone and Huddle, Pocket Radar, and like access balls and stuff like that? Maybe even adding a GoPro is about all that you could do. How would you be as efficient as possible with collecting that information?
I think that what you just said is one of the best ways to be efficient with the information is make sure you're actually collecting it and not just using it from a day to day and the information just goes somewhere and dies. Make sure there's a process in place of how you collect that information. If you have a spin axis ball, for an example, or a back spin trainer, that you're videoing these things so players can see improvement over time, or players can see things that they're not doing well over time, or you'll then have a library for what's effective for that player. If you have like we're talking Diamond Kinetics or the F5 sports ball, you can get cloud access for those things. They're storing information. You're getting data. You might not be getting TrackMan data, but you're getting data that you can use that should be consistent with what the data spitting out is. Like a Rapsodo and a TrackMan aren't the same in terms of what they spit out. But as long as you have consistent information over time, you can compare apples to apples. Does that make sense? Okay.
Hi, Coach. Question I have. So you bring a new player in, and you have no data on them. How many pitches or pins do you typically go with to establish that baseline to know this is where we want to work from?
Man, when we have a freshman come in, I'm not going to say too much to him for probably the entire fall. I would want, if I'm just saying what we'd collect, we'd want to collect about 200 pitches before any real conversation is had. We got some real talented players at Arkansas and other places I've coached, and I always feel like some of those players turn down a whole lot of money to come pitch for us, and I don't ever want to mess around with somebody's career. I don't ever want to mess around with how somebody trains too much right away. I want to make sure that these players have an ability to have a voice in their own development, and if I'm going to just jump in and say, this isn't any good immediately, I'm not going to get a whole lot out of that player. I realize that there are some extremes. There's some extreme cases where you look at a delivery and you're like, we got to do something or he's going to get hurt. And that would be a case where we would intervene early. We don't deal with that a ton, but I understand that does exist at the high school levels and junior college levels. I've coached at those levels and I remember what those were like. And, I think it's a balancing act. I mean, I would probably wait at least, 4 to 5, 6 bullpens, unless you see something that is unless he's experiencing pain or you're seeing like this just will not work over time.
Hey, Coach Rader. In your experience, how have you applied some of this data to some sidearm guys or sub guys over there? Because I'm sure a lot of people here have those guys on their staff. Are there any numbers that you've seen or generalities that you've taken from that you can apply to those guys to see some better results from them?
I think you got to kind of look at a sidearm guy like a straight over the top guy that's bent over. Like a straight over the top arm that is just down to the side and bent over. So if I'm trying to determine metrics on a pitch and I've got 20 inches of lift on a fastball that's directly over the top and 3 inches of horizontal movement, I want those numbers to flip upside down. I want horizontal movement and low numbers of lift on a fastball. So if we're looking at metrics, we want to see efficient spin, we want to see big time horizontal movement, and then we also want to see when we're trying to overlay pitches, a lot of times what we get into with guys that are sidearmers is they're trying to throw like a curveball or a changeup from down there, and they're coming out of their slot to do it. So we start to see things that are different in terms of variances on release points, and then also how efficiently they can spin the breaking ball across the plate. So you're looking for, if they're left-handed, you're looking for right break. If they're right-handed, you're looking for left break, and enough of it to match what's happening with the horizontal movement of their fastball.
Hi, Coach.
Yep.
How are you guys using med balls in season? Like, when during the week are you using them? How often are you using them? When during the practice session? And then also, are you guys running into any issues like increasing rotational volume in season?
We try to keep it as balanced as we can with our guys throwing med balls on both sides of their body. We use it as a pre-throw warm-up, to be honest. If we're dosing out the med ball drills that we showed there on the videos, those are specific case-by-case basis that we'll use for training when we can't throw. But our guys will throw shot puts, 3 shot puts on each side, 3 scoops on each side as part of their pre-throw warm-up. And then in the weight room, I would say we're probably throwing them maybe once or twice a week. And have we noticed some rotational velocity differences in some of our guys? We don't have a motion capture lab, so we're not able to really test that at Arkansas, but we do notice that some guys are coming out of delivery a little bit earlier. We'll take away some of their med ball work. But we use it every throwing day, pretty much.
Anybody have any more questions? Coach, how you doing? My name is Brandon Golden. I'm the strength coach at East Carolina. Know Blaine very well. Actually, met you back at Wake Forest with Mark. How are you guys using the performance data that Blaine's capturing and correlating that with the performance data from the baseball side?
So last year we were measuring, I forget the name of the equipment we were using, but we were doing some jump testing prior to their pitching, whether to try to measure readiness. We were using it more for that than anything. In terms of the data that Blaine collects, we're using strength scores to determine whether or not guys are ready to move on to different levels of their delivery, throw weighted balls, different types of things for that. But really what we were measuring for was readiness last year. What we actually found was it was giving us a readiness score that was more applicable to the weight room than it was to the field. We wanted to measure everything against what was actually happening in terms of results on the field. So if we're measuring that a guy's vertical is X on a pitching day, what exactly is that correlate to in terms of a performance standard? How is he pitching on those days when we're trying to determine whether or not he's physically ready? What kind of results are we getting? So we tried to tie it to that. We got better results for what he would be capable of doing from a training standpoint in the weight room, honestly, than anything. I know there's a lot of stuff out there, Catapult and some other things that are trying to measure performance readiness for pitching. I haven't found anything that is rock solid that I would even be comfortable talking about yet. But when you have a strength coach that's as good as ours, when Blaine Kinsley tells me X player is not ready to throw a weighted ball, like that's a determining factor in whether or not we move forward with that guy, or our trainer tells us, hey, this guy's not ready to do these things you want him to do with his delivery. So we take more of assessments into whether or not they're going to be ready to do anything than we do any kind of like speed testing scores or anything like that. I know he does a lot of work with the Tendo units, and they've been really beneficial for us to be able to train our higher achievers in terms of just guys that have been in the program longer. So we're not training a freshman like a junior or a freshman even like a sophomore. You're training them based on their skill set and their levels. So if I know that Cole Ramage is a 0.6 on a 230-pound front squat, I'm probably messing up some of those numbers, then I know I've got somebody that's got speed and power. And what I need to be able to do then is be able to take that information and blend it into, all right, how much force is he creating based on our force mount? How much is there a component of velocity that we can get out of that? Where is he applying force? I know that he can apply it. I know he can move it fast. Now, how can I then take that information? So in terms of that, I guess, yeah. I mean, we take Tendo scores and, he'll give me outliers and he'll give me things where guys have now, it was a 0.6, now it's a 0.9. So we maybe need to back off on his throwing volume and density. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay.
Any last questions? Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys. Well, good morning, and thank you everybody for waking up.